Libra, welcome to your forecast for the full moon in Aries. So we are into Libra season, and it's all about you, Libra. So I'm doing something a little bit different for my my full moon forecast for the signs. I'm going to do a geoscope, but I'm going to use some astrology cards as well, just to sort of illustrate some points, because not everybody follows astrology. It can be a little bit technical. So for that reason, I'm using the Arcana of astrology cards just to sort of illustrate a few things that are relevant to your sign. So at this particular full moon, the sun and the moon will be in your first and your seventh houses. So Libra, for you, the moon, the moon in Aries will be in your seventh house. So we'll put that over here, your seventh house of partnerships, and we know how important those are to you. And of course, the sun in Libra will be in your first house because it's Libra season. So really the emphasis is on the horizontal line between yourself and others. So this is all about getting the balance right between I versus we. And that is obviously a major theme for your life, being a sun Libra. And incidentally, I should say that, I'm assuming that Libra is rising, at this particular full moon. So when I do readings, if your ascendant is not Libra, I do suggest that you watch the video for your ascendant, because then the house placements will be correct. So anyway, as I was saying, it's Libra season, and so we've got the sun in Libra sitting here in your first house, and then we've got the moon in Aries sitting here in your seventh house. So it's all about relationships for you, and this is really about, if we think about the sign of Libra, this is about judgment, it's about balance, it's about fairness, harmony, symmetry, all those good things. So I think this is really a kind of almost Six of Pentacles kind of energy for you, or justice, if we want to talk in tarot terms, where you want things to balance out. You want mutual reciprocity, you want even give and take between yourself and others. If you have feelings, you want them to be returned. If you do things for others, you'd like to think that at some stage that they'll kind of reciprocate. So a full moon is about culminations or endings. So if there are some relationships in your life that maybe you feel are all kind of give on one side and all take on the other, then it's possible that you may decide to rethink those and possibly let them go. I think this is a big theme during Libra season and for October, is the letting go of what no longer serves us. And that's going to happen not just personally, but also collectively, when it comes to certain structures, because Saturn is now direct, and will be making a series of challenging transits to other planets, including a kind of coming together again with Pluto. And this is going to ask us to look back to January, to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 10th, I think, of January. Saturn and Pluto have retrograded all the way back to those degrees of Capricorn. So this is really a time between now and December of finally putting to rest anything that's outstanding or that needs to go from that period before we move fully into the energy of Saturn in Aquarius. So that's just something to bear in mind long term. But let's get into your geomantic reading and see how these energies are likely to be expressed, in the 3D for you. So once again, using my cards, which are back at the printers, I've designed some slightly larger cards that are a little bit more symmetrical. So I'm waiting for those to come back, and hopefully when we get to do the next reading, they should be a little bit easier to see on camera. But if you do want details about my book on geomancy, they are all in the description box below, as are details of all the decks and the oracles that I use in my readings. Okay, let's cut the cards. So I'm kind of feeling like that actually wants to be on top, so I'm just going to put them back together. So the way I'm reading today is that I will lay out all 12 cards for each of the houses, but I'm only going to turn over the ones that are relevant to the reading. And I will be clarifying with trinkets from the Magpie Oracle because I think it's a nice way to, just get a little bit of clarification on certain things. So let's start with the first and the seventh houses. Interesting. So at this full moon in Aries, which is firmly focused on other people, it's possible that you'll be quite popular. I mean, we've got Populus, which is a water sign, so it's ruled by the moon in Cancer here in your seventh house of partnerships. So this represents your relationships to others, usually one-to-one, and it isn't always romantic, although it can be about, committed partnerships, committed relationships, a spouse, a marriage partner, that kind of thing. But equally, it can be about a financial partnership with one other person, so a business partner, that maybe somebody that you're kind of in a joint venture with. So if so, the emphasis seems to be on community, on how this fits into the larger picture of either your community, a larger group such as an organization, for example, or the wider world. So the kind of the social dynamic. Quite unusual actually, because this is kind of one-to-one, and then this is quite 11th house almost, this kind of populous energy. So I'll be interested to see what the trinkets kind of bring out for us. But here in your first house, where the sun in Libra will be, we've got Acquisitio. Now this is fire energy. It's represented by Jupiter in Sagittarius, and it's very, very expansive energy. So this is that wonderfully optimistic, ebullient, magnanimous, forward-thinking, expansive energy of Jupiter in Sagittarius. So this is you feeling quite confident coming into your birthday month, hopeful for the future, looking forward to seeing some success. It can also sometimes be about material gain. So it's possible that the Libra season will be a time when you'll start to feel more abundant and kind of magnetically attracting what it is that you desire when it comes to manifestation. This is wonderful manifestation energy. It's also very confident energy. So if you have been doubting yourself on some level, particularly during Virgo season when there's such a strong emphasis on the 12th house, I think you're coming out of that energy now into a lot more sunnier energy, which is nice to see. So those are kind of the main trends with in terms of the sun and the moon. And then, as I say, we do have a couple of other things happening. So for starters, we've got the moon making a conjunction to Chiron, and this is healing energy. So if there's some sort of wound that is relating to one other person or relationships on the whole, maybe you've had some bad experiences in the past and you kind of think that you're cursed when it comes to long-term relationships or business partnerships. Chiron is combining with the moon just to help you heal some of those wounds, to turn pain into power. So this is alchemizing energy. It's about seeing things from the perspective of the higher self, of taking anything in the subconscious that might be sabotaging you or holding you back, and alchemizing it so that it is more integrated within your psyche, within your being, and allows you to sort of grow on a soul level. That's really what it's about. So that's one thing to to bear in mind. And then the other thing is that this full moon will happen off the back of that Saturn Mars square, which takes place on the 29th of September. So this is the second pass of a square that first happened on the 24th of August, I think. So let's have a look at, Mars will also be in this part of your chart. So there's quite a lot going on actually here. So I'll pull a couple of trinkets for each of those planets because, this is a very important kind of angular house for you. So we need to get some clarity on that. But Mars will be making a square to Capricorn here in your fourth house. So let's see. Oh, interesting. Another water figure. So we've got 2 water figures, and it's also connected to Acquisitio via Jupiter, the planetary ruler. Very interesting. So a major focus for you on not only groups, and this could be a family group, but also on happiness and joy, the positive emotions. So an expansion of the emotional body happening for you, Libra, which is wonderful. So happiness in the home, joy expressed through relationships with, relatives. So this populace could be, key relationships with family members rather than a spouse, although a spouse obviously would be considered part of the family. So, just, kind of putting that out there. But yes, so Lightish, as I said, is about expansion in the emotional body. So it's about all those ebullient, expansive, emotional qualities like joy and inspiration as well. So things that open up your emotional body and allow for manifestation to take place. So this is the energy, the fuel that allows us to do the manifesting that we so that we want to kind of do in terms of abundance in the world. And of course, we are talking about relationships, so we have to also have a look at the 5th house. Interesting. So this is the 5th house of children, but also of lovers. So this is new relationships. It's kind of sex, passion, and joy. And here we've got Venus, your ruling planet, but in the earth sign of Taurus. So this is earth energy, and this geomantic figure is really about what's ephemeral, what kind of is changing, what's been out of reach or somehow just beyond our grasp or has kind of faded away. So it could be you had high hopes for a romantic relationship and it didn't really materialize. It could also be that you started some kind of creative project and it didn't really pan out, possibly due to, changes in the economy precipitated by the coronavirus pandemic. It could also be that you were trying to conceive and you've had some disappointments there. Maybe there was a miscarriage or an IVF treatment didn't take, for example. That's a possibility given the 5th house kind of emphasis here. But really, as I was saying to Virgo, this month is really a tale of 2 dimensions. So in the 5th dimensions, we are going to be seeing a falling away of a lot of things in the physical realm that we perhaps counted on as being permanent, but we now realize are not permanent. It's just, it's part of that cycle of life, of nature, where things are in constant flux. And then on the other hand, in the kind of 5th dimension, we've got a lot of positive activity happening, which will be exemplified by a lot of positive Venus transits this month. So Venus is your ruling planet. And so, that's something to look forward to, when it comes to love, romance, creativity, and relationships. And then, of course, mid-months, we've also got the last pass of that Jupiter-Neptune sextile. And, that happens round about the time of the new moon. So an interesting time when I think you can do a lot of shifting on the energetic level, but also potentially manifesting. So, Virgo sits in your 12th house. So this is the house of the psyche, but also of, the kind of source energy of all that is. So, that's just something to bear in mind, for that new moon. So let's pull some trinkets and just get a little bit of clarification here about these geomantic figures. Interesting. So this does seem to have something to do with this full moon. Does seem to have something to do with a child, possibly somebody who was acting in a childish way, or it could be about baby steps towards some kind of partnership, the sort of the initial stages, maybe in the process of negotiating a contract with a potential business partner. It could also be about tentative steps towards a new relationship, or it could be about, family relationships to do with children. So somehow children are involved here, which is, it's interesting that we've got this fifth house dynamic going on. Right, so here in your first house, we've got the birds. Now, the birds can be read in a couple of ways. On the one hand, it can be about sort of that anxiety or kind of nervous chatter, but I don't think so, because Acquisitio is very, very positive and confident. So I think this is more to do with communication with one other person, which is very fitting, as I say, given the first and seventh house emphasis here, on with at this full moon. So let's just put those cards like that. So I feel as though this is more to do with conversations, either to do with a family matter, a creative matter, or possibly a business partnership. Let's have a look at the eighth house. Yes, interesting. Again, Venus, but this time in your sign of Libra. Puella is all about harmony, about balance, creativity, civilized behavior, civilized gatherings, all that good stuff. So there could well be some kind of creative partnership in the offing, and this may be, what you're kind of discussing with somebody. So let's have one for the fifth house. Yes. So even if things haven't looked good up until now, don't worry, because we've got the bouquet here, which is very similar actually to Venus. So this is about good news, about a nice surprise, a lovely gesture, or a creative project turning out really well. And we know how design focused you are. So I think this suggests that, if things didn't work out initially, that, they will in the end. It could also, if we think about the sort of theme of children here, it could also be that you might have had disappointments in the past, in terms of conceiving, but you may be pleasantly surprised, with good news in relation to family. So this could be, a pregnancy or a birth. That's certainly a possibility. Let's pull one for Letitia. Interesting. So yeah, I kind of feel like, sudden changes. This is meant to be the size. So it's kind of like things that happen quite swiftly, kind of like a Uranus sort of energy. So maybe a swift surprise that's positive, because Letitia, as I said, is a very positive geomantic figure. So don't be put off by the axe here. I think it just means something coming in quite swiftly. So you could be surprised at maybe a conception or a birth, something that came out of the blue, and you weren't sort of expecting. Let's have one for the eighth house, and then we also need to clarify Chiron and Mars. Yeah, interesting. So here in the eighth house, we've got the garden. Now, this in a way alludes to this populace in the seventh house. So I do think there's a connection here, that we are talking about a work partnership of some kind, but it seems to have a public dimension to it. And maybe that is what populace is getting at. So this could be, for example, a crowdfunding endeavor that has to do with a creative project. That's also a partnership. Maybe you and one other person team up to create something, and then you put it on Kickstarter, for example. Or it could have something to do with a business that is like a social enterprise. So it has a community aspect to it. Maybe it's related to a charity, or you want to do good in your local community, something of that ilk. Let's just have a look at the 10th house. Interesting, yeah. So the card of Draconis here is about the end of something. So the end of something that then leads to the beginning of something else. So this is perfect for a full moon, because it begins a waning moon cycle. So not a good time to start something new. It's really about clearing out what needs to go in order to then begin afresh at the new moon in Virgo, which, as I say, does take place in the 12th house. So I feel as though you're kind of clearing out the clutter almost mentally, getting clear on what plans for the future are going to work and what aren't, and really focusing on what is going to make you joyful and happy. Something maybe career-wise going forward. You don't want a job that's going to take you away from family too much, or that's going to stress you out in your private life. You want time for family and for leisure. So this could be, what's kind of going on here. Let's just pull some trinkets for Chiron and Mars, because, Mars rules Aries, and obviously it rules your 7th house. So let's have one for Mars. Okay. So the cross here does seem to indicate that on some level, relationships have been a bit tricky recently, one-to-one relationships. So that Mars in Aries will actually make a conjunction to Black Moon Lilith at this full moon. And that, for me, the dark side of the moon is all about what we tend to repress, or what we project onto others, or that others project onto us. So it could be that you're kind of coming to terms at this full moon with some kind of relationship dynamic where things like anger, resentment, gaslighting, or people kind of stonewalling you, might kind of come up, which can lead to enormous amounts of resentment. And I think that it's really about letting go of that cross of suffering, forgiving, moving on, just accepting the limitations of certain people, and also maybe the limitations of your own style of relating to others. Maybe moving, just kind of learning how to assert yourself more, because Libra's has a, and I say this as a Sun Libra myself, we have a bit of an issue with confrontation. It's sometimes very difficult for us to assert our needs in relationships, and it can lead to an enormous amount of passive-aggressive behavior because we don't know how to express our anger. So, it may be that you're letting go of a kind of an unhealthy pattern of expressing anger. So, that's something I'm just going to throw out there. Let's have one for Chiron. What is Libra healing at this full moon? Wonderful. So here we've got the star, and of course this is all about healing and about having faith in the future. So, even if things haven't been so great in the past when it comes to relationships, maybe you've got a lot of war stories to tell when it comes to relationships. I think things are shifting in a positive direction. I think you've probably done a lot of work, especially during Virgo season, 12th house stuff, on clearing out self-sabotaging behavior, negative patterns, things that might be lingering from the past, and moving into a much more hopeful time. So I think this trinket is pointing to Chiron as being, have faith. Things can improve, things can get better. Certain patterns of relationships will heal if you put in the work, kind of thing. So that's quite lovely, Libra. Lots of emphasis on emotions and relationships in this reading. Let's get you some parting advice. What parting message do we have for Libra at this Aries full moon? Wonderful. What was I saying about positive emotions and manifestation? There is a stream of love supporting my dreams. So, yes, I think that it's alluding to this wonderful lightisha energy that we've got here in the 4th house, as well as, all the other water energy that we've got, this populace in the 7th house. So really focusing on trying to stay in a love-based vibration, because this is really going to support your dreams, particularly, as I say, as we move into that lovely energy of the Jupiter-Neptune sextile that will happen, at that new moon in Virgo, which takes place in your 12th house. So yes, Libra, a lovely reading again. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me know in the comments if it's resonated. Wishing you all the best for Libra season. Happy birthday. And I'll see you again in a fortnight.